Now this week, Livewire announced some of the details and the full pricing of their second electric motorcycle, the S2 Del Mar. This is the follow-up to the Livewire 1, which was previously part of the main Harley-Davidson brand, and to me it looks pretty awesome. I love the styling with a bit of a flat track stance. But do the specs live up to the looks? Well, in this video, we'll go through all the details to find out. Now straight up, I think Livewire are positioning this bike differently to the Livewire 1. See, when it was originally launched under the Harley-Davidson brand, it felt more so like it was positioned as an all-rounder electric naked bike, but for me, it could never compete with the petrol equivalent. You see, electrics are decent on range when it comes to city riding because you're at low speeds where there's less wind resistance and rolling resistance to overcome, but also they can regenerate when you're decelerating, so actually being in stop-start traffic lengthens the range of the bike, whereas doing constant stints on the motorway at a steady speed without any decelerations is only going to shorten it. You see, it's basically the opposite of internal combustion petrol bikes, where you'd expect better fuel economy at cruising speeds on the motorway and then worse fuel economy when you're between traffic lights. And when you start to look at the range figures of electric motorcycles out of town on the motorway, they do start to look pretty bad. So take the Livewire 1 as an example. You see, that'll get you 146 miles in the city according to the official spec sheet, 95 miles combined, which is a range of types of riding, and then if you're doing purely motorway stuff, it's down to 70 miles, and you just can't argue that it's a viable competitor to petrol bikes on the motorway or for long days out or for touring, because that's just not practical. Now, under the Livewire brand, they're actually describing it as built for the urban environment explicitly, and the marketing for this new S2 Del Mar is pretty much the same. I mean, the photos in the press kit are all in town, the launch events that they're running are all at urban biker hangouts, and even the spec sheet is pretty brief, and the only range it cites is city range. And so this is firmly a city bike. That's where electrics are at their best, and so that's what we'll judge it upon. Now, for me, one of the most important things when you're riding in town, and I did it for years in London on my Triumph Street Twin, is the ability to accelerate away from the traffic lights and get ahead of any traffic that might sort of put you in danger. Now, this bike, they say, does 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.1 seconds, which is pretty rapid. That should easily outdo most cars up to the sort of 30 or 40 limits that you get in town, and anything above that and beyond that is really surplus to requirements. For reference, that's almost the same as the Livewire 1 at 3 seconds for the 0 to 60, and you could argue that's the bigger, more premium, more powerful bike. So how have they done it? Well, firstly, it delivers a boatload of torque with 250 Newton meters listed on the spec sheet. So that's an absolutely huge torque figure. And the thing with electrics is they deliver it right down from pretty much at a standstill. And that's what's going to count when driving off the line as quickly as possible. Remember though, electric motorcycles sort of make that peak torque figure that looks super impressive for a few thousand RPM, and then it starts to tail off. And look, horsepower is a product of torque and revs. And so the peak power figures won't be competitive or comparable with an internal combustion bike. Take the Livewire 1 for example, that makes about 100 horsepower, which is decent, but it's not exactly market leading if you set it against like a super naked, which you could buy for similar money. But the key thing is with this bike, that low end punch to get you moving, and it looks like the Del Mar should be pretty awesome. Now the other factor, of course, when it comes to getting off the line quickly is low weight, so that you've got a decent power to weight ratio, and the S2 Del Mar is targeting a final production ready weight of just under 200 kilograms. Now set that against the other middleweight naked petrol bikes that you might consider for city riding and commuting, and it looks decent, if not, a few kilograms over. But look, electrics are typically super heavy because of the battery, and so actually set against those bikes, it looks really quite good. The Livewire 1, for example, comes in at 256 kilograms, and even the Zero SR, and generally I'd say Zeros are at the lighter end of the electric spectrum, that comes in at 222 kilograms. And not only is this slender weight going to help with acceleration, but also, that agility and nimbleness that counts for so much in town. In fact, if you want to cut down on your commute time, the most important thing is probably the ability to thread through city traffic and waddle through those tiny gaps gaps, as opposed to some massive, impressive peak power figure that's just irrelevant. Now, range is said to be 110 miles of city riding, so slightly down on the Livewire 1, but realistically, if you truly consider this to be a specific tool for a specific job, who's realistically going to be doing more than 55 miles through town to get to work and then 55 miles on the way back again? As you may well be aware, London is our biggest city in the UK, and to ride all the way across it from Heathrow Airport to the Dartford crossing, so pretty much the maximum possible city commute right through town, that comes in at 36.5 miles each way. Basically, you just want enough to get to work and back and then stick it on charge overnight when you get home. It'll juice up overnight and then you're ready to battle your way through the traffic again the next day. In my experience, charging electric motorcycles overnight, there's plenty of time before you go out again the next day, so that's not usually an issue. But if you do get caught short whilst you're out and about, then they're saying a level 2 fast charge from 20 to 80%, which again should be enough to get you home, comes in at about 75 minutes. So if you can find a level 2 charger, then that's easily enough time to nip into the office, or even if you stop and go for lunch or something, it's realistically about enough. Now, there's no word on the spec sheet about other charging times or a full charge or whether DC fast charging is supported, I guess not. But realistically, this is probably the most common use case and it sounds pretty decent. To me, it feels a bit like we're getting to the point where electric motorcycles are being designed like sensibly and acknowledging the sort of boundaries and physical restraints of what's possible. Previously, I felt like you were getting incremental claims for each new bike that was announced, that it had the most power or the biggest range or the best charging time, but ultimately those limitations outside of town and the limitations around charging times at the moment, they're going to be there for some time. Take the Zero DSRX for example. It's an adventure touring style bike, and yet again the range on the motorway is less than 100 miles. It's just never going to compete with a petrol bike like a BMW GS Adventure for example. Can probably do like 3 or 4 times that, maybe more, and yet fill up in a matter of minutes. This though, the S2 Del Mar, it's not pretending to be something that it can never be. And that to me seems a lot more honest. Now, quick look in the cockpit and you'll see some familiar features if you've ever seen some of the recent Harleys. So the Nightster, the Pan America, the Sportster S all have very similar switchgear, if not the same switchgear. And one would assume that the reason for all these buttons is that the 4-inch color TFT dash will not only offer up the basic riding and battery information, but also some connectivity and navigation features. Now, generally I like this new generation of tech on the Harleys that I've tried, and so hopefully more of the same here, just with its own Livewire design and branding. Price is usually the sticking point on electrics, but the US price sounds reasonably competitive for this bike. So they say there'll be 3 color choices and they'll start at $15,499. And yeah, it's still a lot of money for a bike, and there's a lot of other petrol equivalents that you could buy for that. Clearly you're still going to have to really want one of these to justify the cash, but it is a lot less than the 20 or 30 grand that you were looking at a couple of years back for a lot of electrics on the market. Now in Europe, a lot of the pictures actually we've been using in this video are of the European launch edition. They're only going to make 100 of these, and they say that it features an exclusive finish and wheel design, and the graphics and paint in a unique Himalaya white finish are applied by hand using a process that takes 5 days to complete. So as you might guess, having someone spend 5 days on each paint job, they're a bit more expensive, so 18,990 in the UK, and roughly, give or take, 20-ish thousand euros in France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Can't help but suggest that I'd probably rather pay less and just put the normal paint on it. But anyway, they're taking reservations as of now, and you only need a €100 deposit. So peanuts to get your name on the list, and they'll aim to deliver them from September this year. Price aside, certainly looks interesting to me, and I can't wait to take one for a spin and find out what it's like cutting through traffic in town, and also just seeing if it has any guts for out of town riding, even if the range is limited. As always though, let me know what you think of it down in the comments below, and if you haven't seen my review of the original Livewire, I'm going to link to it here. Give it a watch and let me know what you think. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.